One of the greatest things that I've ever learned in this life is that I'm in charge of the quality of my days and of each moment. I am in charge. I have been given that responsibility, that assignment. And something else that I learned is that I can start over as many times as I choose in my life, as many times as is necessary. Anytime that I fall down, I can get up and start over. I can. And do you know that I lived half my life before I understood the simple truth that I just shared with you? For a long time I thought that circumstances and that certain people, that conditions outside myself controlled how my life would be, how my day would be, how my moods would be, how my joy would be. That the quality of my life was not fully determined by me at all. That I could only hope and wait. And it really is not that way at all. And then I discovered that I had not only the power of choice, but the responsibility to make the choices that would ultimately determine the nature of and the quality of my life. That if I should decide that this was the day that God had made for me to rejoice and be glad in it, then by golly, it would turn out to be the day that God had made. And I want you to know that this morning, very early, when I awakened, I already felt so good that I could hardly stand it. But I chose to feel better than I was feeling then throughout the course of this day, to enjoy, to have fun, to be a full participant in the meaning of life, working with the people around me and certainly with God. That was a conscious choice that I made. And would you believe that this day has been of that order of things? It has been. There's a system. You might call it a process. You could even call it a science of starting over, of beginning again. There are principles that any person can practice, and as a result of understanding and practicing those principles, they will get a predetermined result in their lives, in his or her life. And that system is what I want to be sharing with you in these 4 lessons on starting over, so that you, if you really want to start over, if you really mean it, if you're really serious, will begin your life again on a scale and at a level, in a manner that will absolutely amaze you and just boggle the minds of most of the people that know you. It really works that way. Shel Silverstein wrote a book, and it's for kids of all ages, particularly us. The book is called A Light in the Attic, and the poem that I'm sharing with you is called The Magic Carpet. You have a magic carpet that will whiz you through the air to Spain or Maine or Africa if you just tell it where. So will you let it take you where you've never been before, or will you buy some drapes to match and use it on your floor? And of course the carpet that Shel is talking about is the magic carpet of your mind. Your mind will take you anywhere that you want to go, or it'll keep you where you are. And the choice is yours. And you can stay where you are wishing that you were going somewhere by the very same power, by the very same action of mind that will take you where you want to go, being the person that you've always wanted to be. What the mind of man can conceive and believe, it can and it will achieve. And that's precisely what has happened to us. That statement is not future tense. It means right now that whatever it is that you're experiencing in life is what you have conceived and believed and have achieved. And if you want to go beyond where you are, it requires that you start over, because more of the same produces what? More of the same, doesn't it? It really does. This past week I received a card from someone in San Diego And it shows a very prim, sweet-looking little lady dressed in a green dress and to match the color of her hair. And she's neither smiling nor frowning, and she has her hands crossed very comfortably in her lap, and her little blue cat is on the floor beside her green shoes. And there's a little window beside her that she could be looking out into life through, but she isn't. And she's sitting there in a cube, in a box. Now, of course, she doesn't see the box. But you can see the box. Can you not? And she says, "My life is so exciting, I can hardly stand it." Can't you just hear her saying that? My life is so exciting, I can hardly. Of course it isn't exciting, because she's locked in to where she is. And her problem is this. Looking at this caricature, you can see that her refrigerator is filled. I mean, she's got enough. Her problem is that things around her house are not bad enough yet. Do you understand what I mean? I mean, she doesn't really have to change, does she? She doesn't really have to make any moves. She's doing pretty good, but not really very good. If you look at this card, you can tell that she really needs to have something happening in her life, and it's not going to happen. There's no one that's going to come and get in that box with her, I'll tell you, except the cat. Guaranteed. She and that cat are going to have a lot of fun together. You see, one of our major problems is, it's like the story I heard once about a guy who drank a lot, and he got a hold of a bottle of booze that he just couldn't stand, and so he gave it to the fellow that worked on his property, worked around the house. And it was such bad liquor that a few days later when he saw John, the handyman, come around, he wondered what had happened with the alcohol that he gave him. And he said, "John, did you drink that bottle of liquor that I gave you?" And John said, "Yes, I did. Yes, I did." He said, "It was wonderful." And his boss said, "What do you mean it was wonderful?" John said, "Well, if it had been any worse, I couldn't have drunk it. But if it had been any better, you wouldn't have given it to me." So check your life out and see if it's like that. If it's any worse, you couldn't stand it, and if it's any better, you wouldn't do anything about it. Because if you're going to do something about your life, you're going to have to go all out to do it. Halfway measures avail us what? Nothing, right? Nothing. So starting over really means starting over. Willing to break out of your comfort zones, willing to learn new things, willing to become a new person, willing to go into action to experience being the person that you know that you were created to be, but that as of this moment you haven't really found the handle to. There's a saying as old as time, and it's true. You've heard it. And you have spoken it to other persons. I'll bet there's not one of you who hears my voice that have not spoken it to someone else at some moment in an attempt to comfort him or her. You've said, when one door closes, what? Another door opens. You've said it. The problem was you didn't believe it. You didn't believe it when your door closed. When the door closed in your life, whatever the door was, what you heard was the slamming of the door, wasn't it? You saw and heard the door slam, and you kept hearing the echo of the door slamming and of all of the feelings that came to you when the door slammed. And when the door slammed, your negative creative imagination went to work, and you saw yourself not having anymore, being shut off from your good, separated from the past. You were hurt, you were offended, perhaps even desperate or hopeless, certainly wounded in your heart. The door closed, and you forgot about the other door that had opened. So it's very important, if we're starting over, that we look, each of us within ourselves, at the door that closed Could have been in the matter of a relationship. Could be in our professional life. It's the door that closed, with whatever that door was. And there could be more than one door that closed in your life. It's important, though, to see it for what it was and to remember that there's another door open. You see, most people concentrate on the door that closed and hesitate to walk through the door that opened. And the doors are open for you. As we go through these concepts together, I want you to actually experience what I'm saying. I want you to look and to see and to feel and to know that doors are opening for you, and get the feeling that you're walking through some doors into new experiences because you've started over. I once watched a television play about a soldier who returned from Vietnam to some troublesome conditions, to say the least. His sweetheart, the one whose picture he had carried in his wallet through all the battles of Vietnam, had married someone else. His business partner had used the small print in their contract to get him out of their repair business. Former friends who had hailed him as a hero returning from the war turned their backs on him. And even his parents, for some reason or another, kicked him out. This was in a television movie. Now, the feeling of the story seemed to be that poor guy, an innocent victim of other people's selfishness, of their greed and ambition. And the play ended with the victim going back to the army to re-enlist, and with a certain sense of hopelessness. You see, he did not come out and start his life all over. He didn't see the apokatastasis, the serendipity that existed in each one of those events. He didn't see it at all. But he saw himself as a victim and responded as a victim and was hurt as a victim, and the play wanted us to respond to join him in the sense of his victimness. Are you following me? Not only are you following me in the play, but I'll bet you that as I've told you just this part of the story, that you've seen yourself, you've acted out your own little drama, haven't you? Because you've got it. I didn't see him that way at all. I didn't identify with him as a victim, or agree that he was the helpless pawn in the hands of cruel fate. What I saw him being was the victim of the scripting that he had experienced in his lifetime, the same kind of scripting that you and I have experienced. He'd been programmed to depend on other people and on outer conditions, just like you and I had. And so his responses to the circumstances that developed in his life were absolutely predictable and were mostly mechanical. Are you following me? It was like a play that was written and he was acting out his part. And don't you know that when he went back into the army, he just picked up on the script, and no matter where he was or might be, of course this was a fictional character, but in real life, wherever it is that we go, we take our scripting with us and we keep acting out the role, except what we do is to find new actors to come in and play their parts. So if you don't start over, what you're going to do is find another group of actors and actresses to come in and play their roles so that you can react in the old ways. Do you believe me? You know it's true because you've experienced it that way. Now, what's going to change? The scenario? No. You're going to change, and I'm going to change. You see, this young man depended on this girl who married someone else, and without her he was crushed, he was defeated, he was alone, he was weak. What he didn't say was apokatastasis. Isn't it wonderful that I discovered this before we got married? Wow, I'm free to go look for, what's her name? And his partner. Wasn't it a wonderful thing that he found out that his partner had cheated him? Well, with the same energy that he had to become a partner in the business originally, don't you think he could have started another business all over again? Or gone to work for a corporation and risen to the top? He didn't have to go back into the army crushed and defeated. Let me correct that. He did have to go back into the army crushed and defeated. Do you know why? Because he chose to do so, because he did not make new choices. And if you and I don't make new choices, we are still acting out the same scripting and the same emotional responses that we've had in the past. He depended on friends who had praised and complimented him when it suited their plans and their purpose and their ego. And he was crushed still further when they placed their welfare above his friendship. The story pointed out so graphically that a person is in bondage to whatever and whomever he or she depends on. Other people in outer conditions were a hero's taskmasters, and he was their slave. They smiled, his world was rosy. If they turned their back, his world crumbled. And you know, this is no way for us to live, and yet everybody, in some measure, in some style, carry out the scripting in our own experience. Now, what I hope to be sharing with you is the secret of independent and fulfilling living with a new script that each one of us can follow. And that script has been around for a long time, but it happens to be one of the best kept secrets in the world. And the essence of the secret is that although the world has programmed us to call ourselves human beings with human emotions, and if we had questioned that young man in the television movie, he would have said to us, well, I'm only human. What do you expect from me? I'm telling you that if we're starting over, it's important for us to discover that we are more than human beings. We are spiritual beings living in a spiritual universe. And the Bible tells us very plainly and practically that we are also not only spiritual beings, but co-heirs, co-participants, if you will, with the Creator of the universe. And that we have a responsibility to become creative, to become imaginative, and to come alive in our own lives. And the Bible tells us through all of the characters who enact their own scripts throughout the Bible, that it's possible to change, particularly when the going is the roughest. Look at the characters that are there. And the drama over and over unfolds that, boy, when things really get rough, when Goliath really steps up to the front, that's when David comes on strong, right? You could never have had a David if you didn't have a Goliath. And if you don't have a few Goliaths in your life, you can't get where you want to go. But if you crumble and fall back and turn around and march in the other direction, which is our tendency, then we have forgotten that adversity and sometimes heartache itself and the hardship that comes to us is our most glorious moment in the sun to prove that there's more to us than meets the eye and more to us than the world has seen, that we are spiritual beings living in cooperation with a power greater than ourselves, and that we can do all things through that Spirit that strengthens us. But we have to believe it. It's easy to believe it the day you won the lottery. But it's the day you don't, it's the time to believe it. So a prize question to we students of the spiritual life is this. Why do I feel this compulsion to depend on outer conditions and other people? Why do I feel the compulsion to have someone come out of the stands to save me? Why do I feel it? It's still there. Now, knowing that I feel it, then I have the opportunity to turn it around and to really come to believe and to feel that there is something in me that's greater than I am that's working through me. Let's go back to the first book of the Bible that's called Genesis. It's a good name for it, Genesis. And it's really the story of the creation process. It's not just the story of creation, it's the story of the process of creation. And that's a process that each one of us can take into our own consciousness and use right now if we're starting over. For example, the first verse of the book of Genesis reads, "In the beginning, God." First four words are "in the beginning, God." Let me take time out just for a moment to suggest to you that in every area in your life in which you have failed, anytime you've ever failed, anytime that you or I have ever fallen flat on our faces, we started off by saying and believing, "In the beginning, me." Is that true? In the beginning, Jack, for me. In the beginning, I'm going to do this. I'm really going to do this. I'm in charge of this situation. I'm in control. If you will look at your life, you will see that the primary issue in your life has always been control. Who was in control? Guess who's been in control? Those of you who know who's been in control, raise your hand. You and I have been in control. We had control. We did. Check it out. And when we didn't think that things were going right were those moments when we lost control. And actually, some of our best moments is when we lost control, and our great moments are when we give up control. And so I'm suggesting to you that right now that we see that in this new beginning that we are willing to surrender the control. Remember in the last lesson I pointed out the fact that if we want to start over, it's very important that we become 100% responsible for us, for ourselves, for our lives. No longer blaming any other person. And yet, the other side of that coin is that in becoming 100% responsible, we have to admit and to acknowledge that we are powerless. Now, that's paradoxical, isn't it? Doesn't make sense. Here I am that I have to be responsible, but I don't have the power to be responsible. How can this be? Well, it just is. I must become responsible, admitting that I am not powerful or intelligent enough to manage my life, which then puts me in the position of having to, in the beginning of starting over again, say that God is in control. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. The earth was without form and void, and darkness was on the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the face of the waters. And then God said, "Let there be light." You know why God said, "Let there be light"? Because it was dark. And if you don't have some darkness in your life, I hope you get up and leave, because it's not going to do you any good to stay. You know, if you can't say, "Let there be light," to cover the darkness, and if you don't have a void in your life, let me go back and read what I read to you. And the earth was without form. If your life isn't misshapen, are you understanding me? Then you're not going to do anything. You're not going to move. You're not going to start all over. You're going to be in that little box of that prim, prissy little lady that I was sharing with you a few minutes ago. You're not going to do anything about your life unless there is formlessness and void and darkness. Unless you're not fulfilled is really what I'm talking about. And if you aren't fulfilled, then the Spirit of God hovering over the face of the waters of your being can go into action, and there will be light. And there was light, and God saw the light, and that it was good. So in the beginning, God. In the beginning, God. Once upon a time, there was a man named Taylor who started a small haberdashery. And he knew from his past experience that he was not capable of being successful. And so instead of calling it Taylor Haberdashery, he called it Lord and Taylor. That's where the name comes from, Lord and Taylor. They're doing pretty good. So I wanted to be the Lord and Jack. How about you? In the beginning, something greater than me. In the beginning of this new experience. And listen to what Ralph Waldo Trine, who happens to be just an incredible, wonderful mystic, said. To the degree that we come into the recognition of our own true selves, into the realization of the oneness of our life with the infinite life, and in the degree that we open ourselves to this divine inflow, does the voice of intuition, the voice of the soul, this voice of God speak clearly. And in the degree that we recognize, listen to, and obey it, does it speak ever more clearly until by and by there comes the time when it is unerring, absolutely unerring in its guidance. It's true, it's the way it will work. When you and I are ready to really go into action, starting over to fill the void and to create the newness that we seek. Particularly if we've come off of some defeating, absolutely life-threatening, joy-reducing experience, then we are ready to have a spiritual awakening and an experience that is totally transforming. And all of us are starting over constantly in some area of our lives. And I want to remind us all that when we have been through a defeat or a loss and through some grave experience, our reactions are almost always identical, and they fit into a pattern that is absolutely astonishing. And the first stage of that process that we experience is denial and isolation. Let me tell you what I'm talking about. If I miss one of you who've been coming regularly, and I've been watching you grow and change, and I've seen happiness come into your face, I've seen the remarkable transformation that's taken place in you, and then one day you don't show up, and 2 or 3 weeks I don't see you, I will know, and will almost always be correct, that you've fallen on hard times again. You see, the moment that you begin to lose it, what do? You withdraw. Did you know that? There's a tendency to withdraw, to isolate ourselves. Boy, when we're going great, and we show up, we're the first ones to get here. We're pouring someone else a cup of coffee. And when we're not doing so great, they can't find us to pour us a cup of coffee because we're not here. Denial and isolation. And then the second stage is anger and guilt. How can this happen to a nice person like me? God, don't you remember all those wonderful things that I was doing? And look what I've done for other people, and look what I did for her, for him. Then guilt and the blaming of other persons. And not just the verbalizing of blame, but the constant self-talk of anger and of guilt and of blame. Are you understanding what's happening? This happens not only in those things that occur to us, but if someone that we love dies. The denial and the isolation, the unwillingness of the mind to accept the fact that this new reality has taken place. The anger. I mean real anger. And guilt. The sense of guilt for the part that we played or what we should have done and did not do that would have saved that person's life. Or the things that we should have said and did not say. Then there's the third stage, the bargaining stage. Oh God, if you will change it. If you will do your part, then I'll do mine. God, if you will really cause it to be different, then I will do this other thing. And 3 days later, you didn't do what you said you were going to do, God, and so I will withdraw my... Are you following me? Of course you are, because you've been through it. And the fourth stage is the depression. Why me? Why me? All is lost. It can never be the same again. The withdrawal into oneself. And then ultimately, finally, the fifth stage, the acceptance of the loss and of the change. And with that acceptance, there is the possibility of recovery. There's a possibility of transformation. There's a possibility of healing. But only a possibility, because the choice must ultimately be ours. I want to introduce to you a voice that you've heard if you've called this church. It's the voice that usually answers the telephone. And Sandy Hess is also the head of our grief and loss, our death and dying support group. And Sandy, come here with me. Sandy and her husband and her family, some few years ago, went through an experience that has happened to all of us, or will in time happen to every one of us in some form. And Sandy, just take the microphone and share with us what occurred.
Well, about 5.5 years ago, our family, our very close family of 4, was riding on a high crest. Everything was going wonderfully well. And 2 weeks after my oldest son graduated high school, he was diagnosed with acute lymphoblastic leukemia. And on going to the doctors the first time or for the consultation, they told us that his chances of living through the next 2 weeks were less than 2%. And we fooled them all. Dan lived another 2.5 years. And during that time, he had 2 bone marrow transplants, spent much of 2 years, almost a total of 2 years in isolation. It was a devastating time in our lives and a wonderful time in our lives. It truly was. Probably the worst part of all that was after the first transplant, 10 months later, when he relapsed. And our coping skills, we forgot God. We just crashed. And we had met some dear, dear friends who were Unity people in Seattle. And their memory at that time. I was thinking about them, and I picked up a book that somebody had sent Danny, which was the Daily Word, and he got so much comfort out of it. And I looked in the phone book, and Unity was here on 11 Mile Road, which is about 10 minutes from our home. And the next morning, I found myself at the Church of Today at 9 o'clock in the morning, shaking inside and out, desperate for help. And I think back on it, the serendipity of it is just amazing. Where we couldn't find help. I was desperate for help for him. He wanted spiritual counseling, and we couldn't find it. Our own church, which wasn't available to us at the time, and I know why now. At the time, that was very trying, led us to this place. And we came in, and as you know, when you come into Jack's presence, this facility, you're met with love and caring and understanding. And they took care of us. And the first tape we got was Serendipity. That was suggested to us. And over, we could find the serendipitous things that were happening to us. And I shared with you this afternoon that Dan had, on his 59th day in isolation in one period of time, in a very small room, was getting desperate to get out of there. And because of the steroids he was taking in his treatment, one of the side effects turned out to be a diabetic condition, which wasn't diagnosed until he'd lost his vision. And when they finally realized that and saw what his sugar level was, they had to rush him down to intensive care in order to start an insulin drip. And one of the first things he said to me was,
Apocatastasis, yes. But he was finding the good. This young man who was in the process of stepping out of his body was still finding good in the moment-to-moment experience of his life. Is that
He
true?
found that incident gave him the chance to get out of isolation. That's why he saw it. And that was listening to the tapes and doing the work. And the long, hard struggle ended over 2.5 years later with his stepping out of his body. And it was a very gentle experience for us. And at the time, my spirituality and my faith, and as with my son and my husband's, was in a very good place. Because we did understand, we did know that we are all spiritual beings living a human existence. We know that deep, totally and completely. It wasn't until a few weeks later that the human existence realized that his human presence was not going to be with us anymore. And that was devastating, and it was a good point and a good time to come to the classes on grief and loss.
We have a support group here called Grief and Loss, Death and Dying, and you became involved with that group. Right. And it was there that you learned about the stages that you were going through, and you and your family learned how to choose to be healed, to choose to be well. Is that true?
Right. We really, really knew that sometimes things seem to happen, or they may seem to be, that we have no control in the things that come into our life, but we always have the choice in how we react to them. And Peter and I and Rob all knew that we had one of two choices. This was the first choice. One of two was that we could succumb to the pain and the grief, or we could grow through it. We didn't ask for, we didn't want. If we'd had any say in it, or had been able to write the scenario, it wouldn't have proceeded in that way.
Have you grown through it?
Wonderful.
As persons, have you grown in stature and in strength?
Awareness, understanding, our spirituality you can't even compare the level.
Now, when a child dies, what's the percentage of marriages that
We've
fail?
read that it's 70%.
Okay. What has happened in your marriage, though?
I didn't think it was possible because we had a very strong relationship, but it truly is stronger. It truly is. Our son, our remaining son, I fought so hard, Peter and I fought so hard to save Dan's life, that to throw our son away, the remaining one, because we were in so much grief that we couldn't be there to have joy and pleasure in him and in our day-to-day life, would have been in our control.
And your son is usually back on that soundboard.
Yeah, I'm looking back there because he's usually there.
In the grief and loss class, there are 5 steps that you've practiced and that you share with other persons. And the first one is, and I want us to track these in our own minds and our own experience. I'm now willing to give up suffering. Pain may be present, but to suffer is a choice. I choose to replace suffering with understanding and with acceptance. Step 2, I ask myself, what would my loved one want for me? A, to know that he or she is safe, secure, loved, and happy. B, to get on with my life. C, to enjoy, to laugh, and to not feel guilty. And 3, I'm willing to get my mind off myself. That's so important, isn't it, to get your mind off yourself. You see, when a trauma like death happens to us, do you know what the parents and other people in the family say? Then think, look what has happened to me. We see it as a me experience.
Very true. The question along with depression is usually, why me? And no matter how many times you ask, why me, you always get the same answer, and that's nothing.
Because.
So
Getting my mind off myself, helping someone else, getting involved in a program or project, and beginning to enjoy life. And number 4, to accept my changed role in life and confidently assume my new responsibilities, which is really another way of saying starting over. I must start over. This is the time for me to start over. Have you and your family started over?
Yes. Yes, we did. We made the choice. We chose to look at it as the opportunity in which we could grow through, have more awareness, reach out to other people. It's been a very fulfilling time for us. It's very hard to talk to people that aren't of unity and say that the loss of a son, they were both our pride and joy. And to lose one of them, to lose half our family, and still say that it's one of the most wonderful experiences that have happened to us. And I mean that with my whole heart.
And I know that you
really
do.
is.
And I see you working with other people and gradually helping to pull them into the same awareness, into the same consciousness, to help them to make the right choices.
I try to demonstrate to them that my purpose for being a facilitator is to prove that there truly is life after death. There is joy and happiness after death, and that's our joy and happiness after their death.
Thank you, Sandy. Thank you very much. I wanted to bring Sandy before you tonight so that you could hear and understand more about the process that takes place within each one of us. But that same process is happening to us almost every time that we go through the loss of any kind in our world. And the grief is a process, but recovery is a choice. Recovery is a choice that we must make. It was interesting this afternoon, a man came in and I had not seen him for a while, for quite some time. I hadn't seen him for 3 years. That's some time. And he said he did not know what the class was. He did not know that we're here to start over. And he said to me that he had been separated from his wife for 3 years. And he had finally decided that it was permanent. And he was ready to start over. Isn't that interesting? And so he came into the class and went through this process, is beginning this process now of making some new choices and acknowledging what's been happening to him. I was talking to Ray, who happens to be in the hospital, and he had surgery yesterday for changing his pacemaker. He had major heart surgery last year at Cleveland Clinic, and when I called Ray today, he was so enthusiastic and optimistic. I mean, really turned on to life. And, you know, he said, when I get out of here, I'm starting all over. And then he corrected himself. He said, no, I'm starting my life all over again. He said, do you know that being here, I'm seeing so many serendipitous things. He said, my first response was to suffer a bit and to look at the dark side of things. And then I came to become aware of how fortunate I am and how much good I've got going in my life. And he said, I'm going to get the tapes of those classes that you're doing and really get with it. And he talked about his life, I'm talking about his existence, how close he came to not being here. And he said, you know, I discovered something else. The length of life is not so important. It's the quality of life that is important. It's the quality. Isn't that why you're here tonight, to change the quality of your life, to have your life be different? God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change. But you know that we will not pray that prayer until we are willing to give up our suffering? Did you know it? Until we're willing to step out of the past and to stop looking at the door that is closed and can acknowledge and admit that it is not going to be the way it was anymore. Your life is never going to be the way it was. Let me tell you that one more time. your life will never be the way it was. And that's wonderful. You didn't like it the first time. So let's get on with having it become more wonderful than it was. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can. And what are the things I cannot change? Circumstances, conditions, what has happened. What is it that I can change? My thoughts, my feelings, my attitudes. True? But if I am changed, so will my life change. So will circumstances change. An absolutely essential ingredient in beginning again is forgiveness. Then Peter came to Jesus and asked him, Sir, how often should I forgive a brother who sins against me, someone who has made a mistake? 7 times? And Jesus said, no, exclamation point. 70 times 7. Meaning as many times as necessary, as many times as it takes until you get the job done in your own mind. The word forgive means to give up resentment against or the desire to punish. Have you never had those feelings towards someone that you wished them to be punished? And by golly, if you could do it, you would. To forgive means to stop being angry with. It means to pardon them in your own mind, to stop being their judge and their jury, and to come to acknowledge that they did the very best that they could under the circumstances. And yes, what they did could have been a very grievous, a very evil thing that they did. And they may have meant it that way, but that God meant it for good. To absolve, to acquit in one's mind, to clear, to release, to liberate. For whom is forgiveness? It is for the one who forgives. And it's so fortunate, because if it had to be for the other guy, there are times when we never would do it. If it was for that person, we wouldn't do it. But when you come to understand that it is for you, when you forgive, it is for you. It is the forgiveness that sets you free. There will be no freedom. There will be no door that opens, I promise you. There will never be a door that you can truly walk through until forgiveness opens the door. Let's close with some affirmations that happen to be in my Mastermind Goal Achievers Journal for this week. The forgiving love in my heart sweeps away all hurts and unhappiness of the past. The forgiving love is in my heart. Sweeps away all the hurts and unhappiness of the past. Things that were impossible yesterday become the exciting new experiences of today and tomorrow because I'm starting over. I'm beginning again. And I'm beginning on the note with the absolute certainty that my life starts now. Miracles are happening to me because I'm miracle-minded. I'm not problem-minded. I'm miracle-minded. I give thanks for all my blessings. Everything that's happened in my life was a blessing, some of them in disguise, but I will not let them go until they bless me. I count them. I rejoice in them. And I can rejoice in them because I see all things through the eyes of love. I am a winner with the audacity to set and to achieve new goals. And that's precisely what I'm doing. I'm setting a goal that my life begins again, and I will achieve the heights that my Spirit has designed for me. I will experience the heights that I am empowered to attain. Whatever the problem, whatever the need, I will meet it. I will succeed. From an ancient writing, Theologia Germanica. As soon as a person turneth himself in spirit, and with his whole heart and mind entereth into the mind of God, which is above time, all that ever he hath lost is restored to him. And if a person were to do this 1,000 times in a day, each time a fresh and real union would take place. For he who hath attained thereto asketh nothing further. For he hath found the kingdom of heaven and eternal life on earth. And for us, that's what starting over really is. Stepping through a doorway that leads to all the things we're supposed to experience. God bless you.